Good morning, Mark. I think we can begin.
Thank you, Juan. Good morning, everybody. This morning is the first in a series of webinars that the International Association of Consulting Actuaries, or IACA, will be putting on for its members and members of other sections focused on assisting actuarial practitioners in developing their actuarial practices. Interesting to note that over 75% of the registrants today are not members of IACA, but members of other sections. So there clearly is some interest among others in either becoming consulting actuaries by starting their practices or by joining an existing practice. The subject of this webinar is starting a practice in marketing, and future webinars will cover professionalism, quality assurance, engagement letters, contracting and long-term single client assignments, and client risk management. The next session will be on December 15th, 2021, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's New York time. Our first presenter is Ibrahim Mahana, a fellow of the Institute of Actuaries and of the Lebanese Actuarial Association and many other associations, who is managing director and actuary of Mahana and Company in Beirut, Lebanon. This will actually be the first time that I am moderating or presenting where the speaker has an audience in front of him. So if you see Ibrahim gazing off to the left or right, he's going to be looking at the colleagues who are listening to his presentations. We'll be taking questions during the presentation. You can put them in the chat box. Thank you very much. And Ibrahim, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Johan, for all the logistics that you have been arranging. If you allow me to share my screen, I will share my screen now. Jihad, show some. I'm trying to share full screen. Just bear with me for a second. Okay. Okay. Good morning to everybody. Since the majority of the participants are in the Western Hemisphere, so I can definitely start with good morning. On the other hand, we have participants from all over the world. So I can say good afternoon and good evening as well. I would like to start with the abstract, which most of you, I presume, have registered for this webinar after realizing what is this webinar all about. And I will not be reading the slides letter by letter. This is not my style. I'll be talking. However, the slides that we are looking at or will be looking at is primarily to guide me so I don't forget something that I need to talk about. So as Mark mentioned, the next webinar will be talking about professionalism. But as a consulting actuary, I cannot start about talking about a consulting actuary without talking about what is a professional and what is an actuary all about. And this is whereby it is very, very important to differentiate between an actuary and an insurance consultant or a broker or any kind of other people in the insurance of the risk management consulting world. We are a very unique breed. We are governed by our profession. We have a code of conduct we adhere to, and there is a disciplinary process that actuaries they have to address. So this is very, very important to realize that this is what an actuary is all about, is a professional, and this is how we act. The agenda of today, I would like to be talking about who is the person that start an actuarial profession, and why is about a person who wants to start a consulting firm, and what is he going to do, and what he's going to operate, and where he is going to operate. So this is the general outline of the of this presentation. But to gain your confidence and to let you understand the person who's addressing you, who am I would like to tell you my story in the consulting world. And this way you will see that from my experience in the past 35 years as a consulting actuary, I have learned so many things, and I would like to share with you throughout. So 35 years ago, I started IE Mohanna & Company as a consulting firm in Cyprus. And since then, it was the first independent actuarial consulting firm in the Arab world. And it was there to service primarily the Middle East and North Africa. And over the 35 years, we have grown tremendously into several branches in Cyprus, Lebanon, and Tanzania. And just about a month ago, we started a new branch in Kigali in Rwanda. So we operate in 38 different countries. Having said that, at least I can tell you that we can go back and tell you about my story over the past 35 years, and where whoever is interested in setting up a consulting firm, how to go about it. So I started, if you remember from the agenda, we talked about that a person can start an actuarial consulting firm either fresh from college, or having worked for an insurance company or a pension fund, or have worked for another consulting firm and he wanted to start his own firm. As for me, I used to work for an insurance company, so I had no idea about a consulting actuary. We, as an insurance company, I was not exposed to any independent consulting actuary, so we were working all internally. This had a very big handicap of starting a consulting firm when we don't know how consulting works all about. So starting from fresh, I tell a person has to do a lot of homework before starting a consulting firm. And then I will be talking about other people as well. So as for me, I started used to work for a life insurance company, and this is how it started. The journey, as every business, it has its ups and downs. And consulting in particular is very interesting, because clients who have been working without a consultant actuary can say, oh, we are living without a consultant actuary, why do we need you? And a person that has a consulting actuary, most of the time they are content with their consultants, so why would they change? So penetrating a new market as a new consulting actuary is a big challenge. And this is something I would like everybody who wants to start a consulting firm to bear in mind. It is not easy to penetrate. Very few actuaries are changed by their consultant, by their clients, because they are not good, because most actuaries are good. So in principle, you would have to go and compete with these people. And this is what I'll be talking about later on, about competition. One of the first things that I have learned as a consulting actuary independently is about billing. I thought, and maybe I was ignorant, maybe you guys around this room are much smarter than me, but I thought at that time that if I'm seeking a $5,000 income as an individual per month, and if I take a job for 2 months, oh, it would be great if I can bill them $15,000, and I'm great. That's $10,000 for me, $5,000 for my overhead, and that would be fine. I did not take into consideration unbillable time. I thought that every month I'll be having a client that I can bill him the $5,000. So by the first 2-3 years, I noticed that I was barely billing 50% of my time. So technically speaking, if you are billing 50% of your time, you have to bill for your 2 months as if you are billing 4 months. So this is the only way you can survive. So these are issues. Billable is billing and maintaining a time frame of how much you estimate on billing. On the other hand, when you are starting your own job, your own consulting, you are eager to accept any business because you want to put on the books. And this is very, very serious, because at the very beginning, nobody, even at the end, nobody can know it all. So starting a business, you cannot just say, yes, I'll take it and I will learn as I go along. This is not a place to mess around with. This is a profession. You have professional liabilities. So technically speaking, you have to start saying no and accept business that you are able to deliver and to deliver on time and deliver correctly. These are things that are very important to have to bear in mind. And the third or fourth subject that you have to keep in mind, remuneration of staff and deferment of bonuses. Remuneration of staff is very important because your colleagues that are working with you, one way or another, they will know that you are billing a client, and they know that they have doing half of the job and they are not taking half of the income. But they are unaware. You have to pay lawyers, you have to pay accountants, you have to pay auditors, you have to pay licenses for software, and so on and so forth. These issues are very important every now and then to bring it out to your colleagues, to your staff, to let them realize what you are billing is something and what they are taking is something else. And to hold on to your staff, you have to create a deferred bonus system. You should not pay the full bonuses on a yearly basis or quarterly basis in full, because the person will walk away and then you have lost all the training that you have invested in your staff. Here, I would like also to mention, you have to really worry always about your second man in command or second woman in command. That person is a very valuable person for the company, and you have to figure out how you retain them and how you remunerate them and how you bring them into partnership with you. And this will solve also the problem of your getting to at the end of your professional career. Like myself, I have turning 67 this year, and I have been for the past 4 or 5 years figuring out how to retire. So looking for a successor and planning your retirement is very, very important. So these are this is my story. And from now on, let's go and dissect how we are going to handle each and every step of this journey of setting a consulting firm. If we start with fresh graduates, I have seen in the past few years many jurisdictions where university graduates, they graduate with an actuarial degree, undergraduate or master degree, and they think they are actuaries, that they can do the job alone. And unfortunately, in underdeveloped countries, they don't know any better. They don't know about qualification. They don't know about, and they don't have choices. So they will go and they hire a fresh graduate who set up his own consulting firm. But this fresh graduate is very seriously ill prepared to give good advice, unless that fresh graduate is trained somewhere else under another consultant or peer reviewed with another consultant. It is very dangerous to really hire them, or I don't advise these fresh graduates to start directly within 2-3 years from university setting up their consulting firms. On the other hand, we come to the people that are employed out of the industry. It's like myself, the person that worked for 6 years for life insurance company, and I thought I know it all, and I can be a life consulting actuary, and so on and so forth. Here we have to realize that we are moving from secured income to uncertain income. There is nothing wrong with uncertain income, but sometimes it hurts when you don't have the guaranteed income coming in. It will cloud our judgment, and this is something very serious to think about. Another thing also, moving from the industry to consulting, we have to realize when we are working for a life insurance company or a pension fund, we have one Lord to worship. We have one boss, and we adhere to one prescribed rules and regulation of that company. But when we go to consulting, every client is our boss, and every boss has his own rules and regulations we have to adhere to. So we have to realize, are we ready to move into that premise? Are we ready? Are we prepared to work for and listen to different bosses each and every time? So this is very serious. If we go to the people that are moving from the consulting world, whether they were employed or they were partners in a consulting firm, this is very interesting because they are prepared, but one thing they overlook. If they were coming from Milliman or they are coming from Mercer and they were gaining admission to clients, they don't realize that the clients were admitting them because of the name of their employer. They think because they are somebody. I'm not saying they are nobody, but technically speaking, the ticket is really the big employer. So here a person jumping ship from a big consulting firm to set up his own consulting firm, that person have to realize that he have to start from the beginning. He cannot write the ticket. He put on his CV, I worked for Mercer, I worked for Milliman. That's fine. But now he has to prove himself. I'm Mohanna. I can do this for you. I can do that for the, because when he was in the big firm, they have a huge support system. Starting a consulting firm, that support system does not exist. So this is very important to figure out of the entrepreneur, where is he coming from and what are the challenges he's going to see. So why does a person want to become a consulting actuary? Most of the time is because they want to be their own boss. And this is really a joke because you can be your own boss when you are employed. Being your own boss as self-employed, it is not an easy task. You cannot afford anymore to work as a self-employed thinking that I can work today, I don't work tomorrow. This is not self-employed consulting. You have to have the discipline that the office is open, you have to go to the work, and you have to work both as a boss, as an employee in their mentality. So technically speaking, thinking that I would like to set up my consulting because I want to be my own boss, this is a fallacy. I don't advise anybody to decide consulting because they want to be their own boss. They can be their own boss working under another person and making the arrangement of feeling of this independence to some point. On the other hand, some people think that, oh, consulting, we can make a lot of money. Again, this is a fallacy. In consulting, it's not necessary you can make a lot of money. I know, for example, my son is employed and he makes 10 times more than I do, and he's an employee. So technically speaking, it depends upon the employment you are in and the person you are working. So technically speaking, you shouldn't seek being a consultant for making more money. And something else you have to bear in mind is managing cash. In being employed, you have your salary every month and so on and so forth. In consulting, although you may have tons of money this month in billing, but you don't know when the money trickles in. So the cash flow that finance insurance consulting firm is very difficult to manage. Here, I would advise anybody that starting consulting work to make a good balancing between some of the business that are continuously billable, that recur like a retainership, and the one that are ad hoc jobs. For me, I made the biggest mistake at the very beginning is really going after tenders, whereby when the tender comes, it comes a big chunk of money, but not always you win them, and not always they come at the same time, year in, year out. So this is very important to keep in mind. Now I will come to start talking a little bit qualitatively more than quantitatively. One of my biggest fans in theoretical thinking, lateral thinking, is Dr. Edward de Bono, who is a Maltese, used to live in England. I've heard him many times. I've read his books, and he used to talk about the difference between competition. And he dissected the word compete into the meaning of seek together. It means two people are seeking the same piece of pie. So this is compete. And he coined the word of surpetition, or seek above, seek a niche, create your own market. And this way you can differentiate yourself from the others. And because of him, just for everybody's sake to know, that I started my own life insurance company about 30 years ago, whereby I only insured commercial pilots, the life insurance and this loss of license insurance for commercial pilots on a long-term business. So that was a unique insurance policy worldwide. So clients were coming to us more than we are going to them. So creating a niche in consulting is very important as well. We have, as Muhanna, created many different consulting practices in many fields, and that will be something people should capitalize on. Another thing that I would like to talk about, everybody says, I love my job. I love my job is something I don't prescribe to. I always say, as Ibrahim Muhanna, I love my hobbies. I don't love my job. I love my hobbies. I love to ski, I like to boat, I like to ride my Harley, I like reading, I like moving, and so on and so on. This is what I love. And this is something a person have to make in mind. However, saying I don't love my job does not mean that I don't work with love. That's a different thing. I say it is not necessary to love your work. It is sufficient. It's nice to love your work, but it's not necessary. However, it is necessary to work with love. And I always take the mother changing her baby's diapers, the best example what is to work with love. Certainly nobody likes to clean shit of anybody. However, the mother does it with love, without waiting for a thank you from that baby. And that relationship grow together of appreciation. So when I work with my client, I work with love, irrespective of whether I woke up in the morning feeling to work or not feeling to work. If I accepted the job, I work with love. And this is very important to maintain. It's not a matter whether I love my work or not. As a matter of fact, the last point on this subject, it is dangerous to work with love, to love your work, because it may make you become a workaholic and forgetting many important things of your personal life. Now, where to operate? This is something very interesting, and many people would like to grow. I'm one of them because I had a big ego. As a matter of fact, myself today, I don't like myself 15 years ago, the way I used to be, which was the ego of wanting everything. And the only one I realized to accept my size and accept to grow slowly and to reflect. And this is the only time a person can really strengthen his consulting practice. It is very important to realize your backyard is the most important thing for you. Why? Because you know it's rules and regulation, you know you are close to your client. And when you want to reach out away from your backyard, from your locality, the clients will respect you more because they'll say, oh, their neighbors, his clients next door, they are using you. They trust him. We can trust him. If you try to venture and to go international or regional, and you don't have a backbone in your localities, then the person over there, they say, how come their own local area do not use you? Maybe his reputation is not good. So it's very important to start any any consulting practice, to start locally in your neighborhood. And this is when you gain acceptance, and make sure each and every time you finish a project to take a letter of recommendation from the client and to figure out that this and inform them that you are going to use that letter to strengthen your portfolio, and even ask them for referrals. When you go to international, this is a different ball game. Now, regional, international are different ball game. It's not anymore different regulations, but different cultures and different practice and different competitors. And as I mentioned earlier, you are away from your client. You cannot visit them as frequent as you would visit a client that is next door. And this is where I would leave it to Mark to start some questions and dialogue with the participants. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ibrahim. That's my dog in the background, and I apologize. But so we've got one question from the panelists, which is interesting. Why was Cyprus your first office?
Actually, in 1984, the war was raging in Lebanon, and my wife and children were in the States, and I did not want to go to the States. I didn't want to leave Lebanon. Cyprus was the closest, most peaceful area to set up shop in. And I thought the war will finish in a couple of years in Lebanon. I set up my operation in Cyprus, hoping to move to Lebanon, and I ended up staying 16 years there. They were very good memories, but our company in Cyprus is still up and running for the past 35 years, but we have branches in many other countries.
Thank you for that answer. The next question is, how did you choose the size of your company? Was it based on the market, based on your personal preferences, whether you wanted something relatively large, relatively small, or just a hunch, your feelings? So how did you do that?
Actually, as I told you, most of the time people have a big ego. I realized there is no consulting firm, and I wanted to create a major consulting firm. To my surprise, which I didn't do my homework, and this is what I mentioned in the abstract of this webinar, a person should do a proper feasibility study and market study before starting consulting, which I did not do so. I only realized there is no consulting firms. I've learned by trial and error. My biggest challenge was to hire actuaries on staff. There were no actuaries in Cyprus. It took me 2 years to, while attending the ICA, the International Congress of Actuaries in Helsinki, having a beer with Harry Panger, and telling Harry that I'm in Cyprus, I'm struggling to find actuaries in Cyprus. And he said, oh, I remember I had a student in Texas from Cyprus, studied actuarial science at University of Texas. And he gave me his name. And I came from Helsinki back to Cyprus, started looking for that guy. He was returned to Cyprus, not knowing there is an actuarial firm. We're working for a bank. And I reached out to him, offered him a job. His wife was also an actuary, that American that studied actuarial science in Texas. I hired both of them. And this is how the business started. And this is how it goes.
Okay, that's interesting, which leads me to the next question, which is, how do you go about hiring personnel? What criteria do you have? I mean, clearly one criterion is that they are interested in working in the area where you are trying to add staff, but overall, what is, what do you look for? There are a number of qualities that you could be interested in, maybe high ego, low ego, certainty, being willing to listen, not being willing to listen, and so on. So what are the criteria? How do we go about hiring people when we are starting our practice and we found that the work that we've got is a little bit too much for one person?
It is very interesting. Again, by trial and error, I started hiring almost every Cypriot that had a degree in actuarial science coming from England or the States. I hired them. So right now in Cyprus, every general manager, the regulator, everybody has started with us. So I hired everybody, and 1 year, year in, year out, we had 5, 10, 15 every year hiring people, because I believe the profession has to develop, and we were the right people for them. Now, almost all of them, 80, 90% of what we hired, they became the best ambassador to the firm, because they went and worked for the industry and they used us or recommended us and everything. However, few of them, they were the worst hires, whereby really they become not only competitors, but unprofessional competitors. This is where we start learning by this, I said, by trial and error, saying not every actuary is a decent actuary. So we have to really interview and not to hire them just only qualification. We should hire them based on personality and their ambition and everything. And some of the actuaries that we hired, had we assessed them from the very beginning, from day one, I should have read through them, that they are exactly like me. They want to start their own practice. They want to penetrate a new market. So I hired a South African that wanted to start a practice in the Middle East. He worked for me for a couple of years, and then he stole the business, and then he became a competitor. And on the other hand, we hired people without taking recommendation from previous employers. Only because they are FIA, we thought they were great. But when we fired them later on, and I talked to Doug Berker, I talked to a senior UK actuary about, how did you hire this guy before? He said, Brahim, you didn't ask me. We fired this guy before. Had you asked for a recommendation, we would have told you the guy is not hireable. So it is very important for when you are hiring somebody with experience to get a recommendation. If they are not willing to give a reference, you should not hire them, because there is something fishy about it. And another thing, if you are uprooting somebody, it is only fair not to uproot somebody from their job without you knowing that they fit correctly with you, because it is not fair to them to ruin their life, to bring them to you, and then later on say, oh, I'm sorry, you don't fit in. So if you uproot somebody, you should be cautious enough, you should be ethical enough to be sure that that person fits in, and that person, you should give them enough time to make the decision to join you as well.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. And along with this, you mentioned ego earlier in your presentation. Do you think there is let's say, a golden rule or a appropriate measurement between ambition and humility? Is there something there that you would look for in a potential hire?
There is a big difference, I believe, between ambitions and ego. There is nothing wrong with somebody being ambitious. Ambitious is a person driven to get further in life, and that person, a good people with ambition, usually they listen very good, they plan very well, and there is nothing wrong with ambition. Ego is when somebody becomes blind and usually start not listening to anybody else, and they think they know it all. And this was the case with me 15, 20 years ago. When I became very successful, I owned 2 insurance companies. I have a software insurance company. I had brokerage firm. I had a consulting firm. And then I realized, I thought, this is it. I know it all. And this is when I start realizing, and it was really a slap on the face by a regulator to me, to tell me, wait a minute, you are not fit in this particular position. And I did not listen to the regulator. And then it took time. It took me 6 months until I had to accept their decision, and cost me a lot of money. And this is what woke me up to realize that the only way you can tango is when you have a good team and you can work together, and you are in many situations not superior to anybody.
Thank you. Another question related to technology. Is there some way that you use technology as a differentiator between you and other firms, whether large firms or small firms?
Technology is a major ingredient for success. If a consulting firm is not really up to the use of technology, they are lagging behind, and it costs them by far more to operate than if they invest into technology. And this is why I said invest, because at the very beginning, investing in technology may sound a little bit more expensive, but on the long run, the procedure becomes correct. So I am a complete supportive in investing in technology.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Have you entered into any international alliances or other alliances, whether with other actuarial firms or with other professional firms in the countries where you already operate?
As far as an actuarial firms, I don't think that appropriate to say which a group of firms I'm talking to right now, but yes, we are under discussion with one of the networks. It's one further than flirting, and we are only having an issue because we are present in so many countries. There are a couple countries that are overlapping within the network, and we are trying to figure out how can we solve that issue. As far as other arrangement, but not actuarially speaking, yes, we have joined forces with an auditing firm, a regional and international auditing firm, recently, primarily for the implementation of IFRS 17, whereby we are the actuarial partner in the joint venture, and they are the accounting, the financial partner. And this joint venture that we have done have landed us. We are doing dozens of insurance companies consulting on IFRS 17 implementation.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think that is a fairly common approach that clients are taking in hiring both an accounting firm and an actuarial firm for implementation. Okay, so the next question is, have you worked on any non-traditional or non-actuarial assignments that were particularly memorable or interesting? What difficulties did you face, and what were the lessons learned?
I did mention earlier that over the years, I have done quite a few product design that are not traditional. A typical product, and not a typical, a unique product design that we did, it is similar to the typical product that is in the market. We all know of the KNR, kidnap and ransom insurance. During the war of Lebanon, there were a lot of kidnapping, but there were no ransom requirement in the kidnapping. There were political detentions more than ransom kidnapping. I remember in the early 80s, when several American professors at American University of Beirut were kidnapped, I went to the president of the AUB myself, and I told him, I have a solution to your problem. He said, why? Do you have a bodyguard business as well? I said, no. But every professor that is being kidnapped or detained, technically speaking, ethically speaking, you have to maintain their salary. But at the same time, you would have to hire a new professor to teach that class. So you have a financial loss. So I created for him what we call detention and disappearance policy, whereby we pay a monthly salary, a monthly income to the university to replace the, to compensate for the salary they have to pay for the second professor, as long as the person is displaced, detained. Because of this design of this plan, I had to go to Lloyd's of London and to create a policy and to get a syndicate to insure it as well. And funnily enough, I was so proud that we as a consulting firm, we were collecting the money on behalf of the university, paying it to the syndicate of at Lloyd's and managing that portfolio. This is one of the products that we have designed. We have designed a product also in New York for low budget movies, whereby we created a fund to finance low budget movies and the default. So we have created many things that are very unique as Muhanna and company. And one of the things that I think that maintained us in the forefront is because 2 years after we started the consulting, I thought that the best thing is to maintain a proper education into the system, and created the Muhanna Foundation with an education institution, and we start financing projects that are for the public good. And that gained us a lot of credibility and respect in the market, and whereby it gained us a lot of business as well.
Thank you. Another question, and I'm not sure. I know you mentioned that you had worked. I think you said you had worked for an insurance company for 6 years prior to starting your consultancy. But do you think that there should be specific management classes or classes in running a practice in order to be qualified to manage your own consulting business? Or do you think that's a skill that anybody can learn over time, and that actuarial studies are sufficient in order to start a practice?
I believe the previous actuarial syllabus and the core syllabus that we studied when we were at the university do not equip us to really start a practice. It's exactly like a doctor starting a hospital or clinic. He will go bankrupt in no time. The successful way to run a hospital or a clinic is a health management degree, not a medical degree. So being a good actuarial technician does not make you be able to run an insurance practice, to run an actuarial practice. You have to have management skills, you have to have a business laws, you have to have a business flair, you have to be a marketer. Most actuaries are timid by nature, so not everybody can sell. In consulting, the consulting actually have to sell the business, have to go and promote. I'm not talking about statutory requirements whereby you just get a request for a proposal and you write a proposal. A good business are, you have to sell them, and most of the time you have to bring it to the attention of client that does not realize that there is a solution to a problem he has. So you have to be well versed as a person to be able to be a good consulting actuary.
Good, thank you. Another question, which actually a similar question has come in from two different attendees. When starting your firm, how did you compete with the international firms such as Mercer, Willis Towers Watson, well, whatever it was called at that point, and with big four firms in Cyprus and Lebanon? And I think, you know, a similar question really is, how risky is it to start a consulting firm in a semi-developed area where the big four are already prevalent?
It's very interesting. At that time, the big four and certainly Mercer, at that time, it was Bacon and Woodrow, it was Wyatt before it became Watson Wyatt, and so on and so forth. These people had a threshold, a minimum consulting fee. They are not interested in a consulting fee of $5,000 project or $10,000-15,000 product. So we had an entry into the market of the small clients that the big guys are not interested in. And most of the clients that we approached at the very beginning, they were not even using actuaries. We were telling them that we have value added to them. It is not a tax being using an actuary. So that was very important way to enter the market. I remember very well when we wanted to take a leap. We wanted to take projects that are in the $50,000, $100,000. And that was primarily Social Security project. We were unable to enter without making a joint venture at that time, whether officially or not officially, with the GAD, the Government Actuary Department in the UK, whereby we go doing the consulting, we do the work, we get the data requirement, and then we work together. And if you remember our close friend, Chris Dakin, at that time, was the government actuary. So we worked very hard, and it was interesting how it came about. There was a very big job in Greece on Social Security reform, and in the requirement, they wanted to request a performance bond. And of course, the UK government actually cannot provide a performance bond, So we provided the performance bond on behalf of the government actually for us to do the work. So the first 5, 6, 7 years, all the work on Social Security was peer-reviewed or co-worked together with the JD on Social Security only, not other commercial work. That was until 2008. We had a very good relationship, and we monopolized all the Social Security in the region, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Qatar, UAE, and you name it. After 2008, and the financial crisis took place, we were sandwiched between the big guys and the little guys. The big guys, they lowered the bar. The ones that were not accepting any business under $100,000, they are willing to bid on a business for $80,000. And the small guys that they were not invited into that types of business, some of the clients wanted to save money, so they start invited smaller organization. So the market that we had a niche in, that market disappeared. So we were being competed by the big guys and the little guys. And of course, some clients accepted, they went with Mercer, even if they were 5, 10, 15% more expensive than us, only because they wanted to try the big guys. Some of them, they came back to us, they realized we have value added by far more than anybody else. So we had this kind of relationship. Now in Africa, we are reliving what we lived in the Arab world 20, 25 years ago. In Africa, there is no really major consulting firms. We were competing against the big firms, and we score heavily on the technical, and they are, although many people look at Africa, there is a lot of corruption. I can say in all countries who have worked in Africa, I have tremendous respect on the procedure they go through in the procurement system between, at least in the Social Security and pension world.
Thank you. So moving on, are there new potential areas for consulting actuaries to work in that excite you, or that don't excite you? What do you think is down the road for actuaries? Do you think there's a role for actuaries in banking? I know that there are, there's some work going on at the IAA to bring actuaries into banking, or to for actuaries to understand the banking business. But what do you think there is out there for consulting actuaries in the future?
I think of 3 industries whereby actuaries have a tremendous growth. One, if we want to call it an industry, in education. Most third world countries, there is no actuaries in the education system. So even universities that have actuarial program is being taught by mathematicians or statisticians. Then not even actuarial science is being taught by non-actuaries. So there is a big room in the education field for actuaries to enter, at least in the developed world. This is one. And the other one is the financial sector, and I don't limit the financial sector to the banking only. You have to talk about microfinance, you have to talk about stock market, you have to talk all the financial sector at large. Thirdly, which is very, very interesting that people don't think about, in the rating agencies, actuaries are very instrumental in the work of rating agency. As a matter of fact, I own a rating agency, the only rating agency in the Middle East that covers insurance and municipal and local authorities. So we have actuarial work doing in the modeling. So these are the three things that I believe in. The fourth one, which it should not, it's not an issue that I should raise. It is raised heavily right now, healthcare. Healthcare is a major sector where actuaries have to play a bigger role, whether on national healthcare or local private healthcare.
Okay. Do we have other questions from the attendees? If not, can you, well, or should I say while we wait, I hope we do have some, can you talk a bit about, I know it's not necessary, it's going to be a topic of one of our next sessions, but can you talk a bit more about professionalism and, actuarial standards, code of conduct, and so on that all of us globally need to observe?
I mean, the fact that professionalism is a course, a part of the curriculum of being an actuary. Now, our audience are all actuaries, whether they are qualified European or Anglo-Saxon or whatever, they are all actuaries. Although there is primarily two tracks of this educational system, whether through exam-based or university-based, the common denominator is not the core curriculum. What brings them into being qualified actuaries is the professionalism, because technically speaking, exam-based, you take all the courses, university-based, take all the courses. But what the university does not teach is professionalism. And this is where every association and countries that take the actuarial education in university as the basis for qualification have to really set people into exams, into professionalism, to really teach them what's the difference between an actuary as a professional and an actuary as a technician. Everybody that studied in the university and did a good master's degree and qualified well and everything, unless he takes the course of professionalism, in my opinion, he is not a qualified actuary, because he will not act in the mindset of the profession. And this is the very most important thing. And for the past 15, 20 years, with my activities at the IAA in the Advise and Assist Committee, is primarily talk about professionalism. I have spoken in Riga, in Minsk, in Bratislava, in Siberia, in Istanbul, in so many countries about this subject, and this is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question, and I know you've touched on this a bit, but how can fully qualified and student or actuaries in training, how can they help their own national governments, with either healthcare or Social Security or anything else that you may want to discuss? How can they help the governments?
As individuals, they are in a very difficult positions, because freshly graduate students, or even after 4 or 5 years, they are still too young to really advise the government. What I believe that there should be local associations and collectively write a paper every now and then and pass it on the system for the senior people within the government start looking at the profession and respecting the profession. For example, I'll give you a small example in Lebanon. About a year ago, with the devaluation of the Lebanese currency from 1,500 Lebanese currency to $1 to almost 15,000 and now 20,000 to $1. That was a major effect on the insurance industry. So we, as a Lebanese Association of Actuaries, we wrote a paper and gave it out to both insurance companies and international reinsurance companies, how to handle this kind of mismatching of the deterioration of the currencies and having multiple currency prices. So yes, in all developing world, I urge and I hope I'm told from the IAA that this webinar will be made available publicly for non-members of the IAA as well, who are actuaries in Africa or many other countries, but they are not full members of the IAA, so they can read and they can hear what we are saying, how they should invest in their local association and urge that association to become full member of the IAA.
Thank you. And another question related to a topic that is taking on increasing importance or primary importance around the globe. How can a consultant advise on climate change and on ESG?
Yeah, I have a problem with the climate change right now because the IAA circulated quite a bit on that, asking many associations to give their opinions. I was frank. I spoke to the president of the LAA just a couple of weeks ago, and I told them that we cannot make any comments. We don't have the resources to really to make educated opinion on that. We piggyback on the big guys, what they are doing. We benefit from other organizations' work on the climate change. So we cannot comment on that ourselves.
Well, do you think that there is work that actors can do based on, let's say, information or scenarios supplied by others, supplied by governmental officials or scientists or anything, not necessarily to make our own judgments or to model things, but not based on developing our own assumptions, to model things based on assumptions that are provided?
I think actuaries are well trained to analyze data, and we think about data in a different way. For example, just to let you know, when COVID started, we as Mohanna and Company, we finance a project. And here I have one of our colleagues that updates the project since April last year about COVID. And what we have done with that, we looked at COVID in 3 different angles, unlike the angles that you read about COVID worldwide health-wise and the health system and the strain on the health system. We looked at COVID demographically, we looked at COVID economically and health-wise, and we tried to find correlation of the 3 on COVID results and to help different governments to take the appropriate policy decision about lockdown and so on and so forth. And the study we published free of charge worldwide. It's updated weekly or monthly. Now we update it monthly because the data is becoming very large. And it is on our website. The tool is available. We have almost 200 countries that we monitor all admissions, we monitor all deaths, we monitor cases as well, and we correlate them demographically, economically, and health system per country. So yes, as actuaries, anybody likes data, they can dwell into data and can make opinions.
Thank you. So we are actually at the end of our presentation. I would like to thank all of the attendees. Certainly thank Ibrahim for his very interesting presentation. I look forward to our next presentation a month from now. And to just mention that well, I think most or all of the attendees on the call are members of one of the sections of the IAA. Certainly joining IACA would be a plus to help understand what it takes to become a more successful consultant and to take advantage of the opportunities and education that we provide for consulting actuaries. Thank you very much.
Allow me to add here.
Yes.
We are one of the sections that we try to give added values for our members. We have negotiated on behalf of our members very reduced prices for people to be having access to tenders for public tenders. We have also are negotiating on behalf of our members try to get cheaper professional indemnity insurance. We are very active commercially trying to help our members. And if anybody have any particular question, feel free to drop me an email on my on the screen. You have it in front of you. I'll be more than happy to address it.
Thank you. And also to add that there will be a recording of this presentation available. I usually it takes, I think, a day or so, and then we'll send out an announcement about it to the attendees. So again, thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.